Hello and welcome back, and today I want to do another video on a surveillance camera for the home, but with a slight twist on things today. Today I want to talk about the Galayou G2 and whether it is the dictionary definition to the words almost too good to be true, because this device knocks around right now for about 20 nicker, and that's about 20 to 22 quid in the UK, and again that's about $29, and it is an OnViv, so remote network accessible IP camera. Now the fact that it's OnViv also implies that it is NAS compatible, making it one of, if not the cheapest camera that you can buy for your network attached storage device and surveillance. It has its own software on board, usable with a mobile application and with all the tracking and the apps, and it's got SD card storage as well as an option. But still, the idea that you could attach a camera in your home environment for a little over 20 quid and also have a camera that is potentially, because we're going to check by the end of the video, is compatible with your network attached storage device, it's genuinely too good to be true at that price tag, to be frank. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's talk a little bit about the G2 from Galayou. So first and foremost, it is a 2K camera. No 4K, but 2K, which is still pretty darn good there. Now, that 2K camera is also a pan and tilt and digital zoom supported, so we're just going to ignore that zoom. The fact that it's got a 355 degree rotation and a 52 degree vertical motion built into it is already pretty impressive off the bat. It also has your standard motion detection. It's also got a 4 LED night vision mode that goes up to 32 feet on board. It's even got audio in and out. You see what I'm saying there? This has got pretty much the baseline of all of the features you want in a camera for the home that has the potential to be compatible with a NAS. Now, if we have a little look inside, what we get first and foremost is our first time instruction manual. And again, you can set it up with the app. It's the WansView cloud application if you want to use their services. Also inside, if we remove the camera itself, have a look at it there. Nice sleek looking little device there. Very small, fairly default looking. There's quite a lot of cameras that look like that knocking around these days. Also inside we have got a UK mains adapter that connects to a USB. If we have a look, there is our USB adapter. And again, it's a standard Type A connection there on the rear. We've also got a base there, so if you want to ceiling or wall mount this camera, it is an option. But again, bearing in mind that although it's got that rotation on the horizontal, that vertical of only 50 degrees there means if you're going to mount the camera there, that's not a huge amount of direction, so perhaps an upside down view there. But still, having the idea that you can mount it with the mounting kit as well as all of the screws and fixings you're going to need is still pretty impressive. You've got a 2 meter USB Type A to Type C cable included, and again, that's really it. You've got the wall guide for lining the thing up on the wall, and that's really a lot. So I wasn't really expecting a huge number of accessories for such an affordable little camera, but still nonetheless, the camera quality feels all right for a 20 to 30 nicker camera, depending on what your currency is, and the lens isn't too shabby. Again, when I go into the software, I'm looking forward to seeing what the frame rate is, because I imagine it's going to be 2K 15 frames per second, but anything higher than that I'm going to be quite pleased with. Also, along with that microphone for audio in, as mentioned, you've got audio out, that speaker there just on the rear. Now, that could be used in one of two ways. One is the obvious way, using the app that you can actually see something on the camera remotely and then speak, and then it will come out of the camera and also record what's coming in. But there's also the ability to attach an internal siren alarm to the motion detection if you choose. Now, at that price point, I can't imagine PIR, kind of advanced infrared features being built in, so I'm not sure how I'd feel about having a loud alarm based just on motion when there's so many things that move, particularly when the light can just move a shadow that can trigger a camera if it's not sophisticated enough. But still, having audio in and out on a camera at this price point is still pretty darn good. And the fact that it includes the mains adapter and stuff, which I know aren't strictly expensive, but generally when you get to the sub 30 nicker bracket for a camera, Normally, your PSU included, it's just not there. Particularly pan and tilt. Very rarely are they included on a camera at that price point there. Now, it's not all good news. If we go to the bottom, we can see that SD card slot built in there, which is good, but it only supports up to 128 gig SD cards inside, which is still pretty bloody big. But with many cameras these days arriving with support of 256 gig and a lot of the price point and the value at the 32, 64, 128 and 256 gig SD cards being so very, very small, you may feel a slight negative economy there that you can't scale that storage up a little higher, particularly when you start talking about 2K recordings as well. Another bit of slightly quibbly support is, as this is a cheaper camera, you will be unsurprised to know it only supports 2.4 gigahertz connectivity, not 5. Now, to put that into perspective, most modern mobiles run on dual band 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. Indeed, most devices these days that are considered premium or prosumer have 5 gigahertz support, along with the router from your ISP. So depending on your settings, whether you're using wireless access points or a mesh, you have to make sure that your network this is connecting to wirelessly, because there isn't a LAN port on this, is running on 2.4 gigahertz. Because if it's not dual band or it's not preset to 2.4 gigahertz, which is a lower speed but a larger range of coverage compared with that of 5 gigahertz, you're not going to be able to interface with this camera. So do be aware of your own network setup before considering introducing this, because otherwise you're just not going to be able to communicate with it, because it won't be able to communicate with your own wireless router there. But again, the build quality seems good to me. Again, doesn't feel the plastic on the outside is not hugely surprising for the price point, so I can't really critique it. And I think the only thing left to do now is to test how well it works, both on its own software and whether the NAS can pick up this on-viv camera. Let's make our way over to the laptop and the mobile. Okay, so we've made it to the desktop of my mobile here. This is a Google 6 Pro, and we're running the latest version of Android. We are running screen recording software there in the side, so that may drop the frame rate from time to time while we're looking at this camera. But let's go straight into the WANS View app. A completely free app, of course, available in the Android Google Play kind of shop center there. And if we have a little look, this is what we see. Now, again, we're only using one camera. If I had multiple cameras there, we could have added there and the feed would have been a great deal bigger. So let's not go too harsh on them for all the slight minimalist design there. Also, we could have opted for a multi-screen layout if we'd had more than one camera. But unfortunately, because we've only got the one, that's what we're going to work with here. But this is still a very, very cost-effective camera. So although we are, of course, reviewing this software and what the camera can do, we also, of course, have to bear in mind while doing this that we are talking about a budget lower-end camera. There's a plane going overhead. I apologise if there's any noise there. So first and foremost, let's have a look at the feed. This is what you see when you're connected to the camera right now. We can flick between full HD or standard definition quality there. We're running on full HD on this 2K camera. So from there, we can have a little look about what we see. Now, I've muted this camera. It does have audio in and out, but it's just very important to note that that audio in and out is going to create a feedback loop on the recording, so I've had to disable it there. But take my word for it, the option is there, as well as the option to just tap the mic, and talk through. Another thing you can do is create a local recording of footage if you choose. So again, you can save that locally to your phone if you don't want to use a memory card or the cloud services. Same goes if you want to take a snapshot, that will create a snapshot there of whatever's on screen that you can back up there. Now, if we have a little look, what you can do, of course, is change the position of this camera. Now, you can have preset saved positions if you choose, or you can create and use the console. This will allow us to operate the pan tilt zoom function, have a little zoom around, and then, of course, on screen, we can pinch and zoom in on different devices. You can see that clock has decided to stop moving its tail. How terribly annoying. But again, you can zoom out, you can zoom in, all the usual stuff. But bear in mind that is a digital zoom, not an optical zoom. But the control there is pretty darn good there. The sort of level of control, very responsive. And again, once you find an angle that you really, really like, you can then save that as an available camera space there. And that will now save that position. So if you make your way back, say for example, we go back into the camera and we change that position, we move it up there, we can exit that console, go to position and say, I like that camera in position 1, and will automatically flick to that previous position. And you can have it so it can do a routine where it flicks between them, but that does require the more sophisticated software end. Now, that's pretty much it for all the controls you have of the camera. You can kind of reverse the picture there and then have the pan tilt zoom control on screen. Unfortunately, you are going to now see this at the wrong angle because of the way I'm recording this today. At this, I've had to commit to one direction or another. Now, when it comes to adapting the camera, there's quite a lot of options there open to you. You can adapt a lot of the camera settings themselves, a lot more information there. You can choose whether you want to send a 3D barcode to family members so they can access the camera. So if it's a shared environment with the camera. Alternatively, you can change a lot of the output, both audio and visual there, of what you see there on screen. And again, you can choose whether if you're using the camera upside down, whether you want to reverse that, as well as how well you want that microphone and how loud you want the alerts to be. Local applications there if you want to activate some of the utilization. Of course, if you want to use it on a NAS, you're going to have to go ahead and enable OnViv support there. Bear in mind, of course, that when you do this, you are going to either have to set up a password on the camera or allow the camera to be able to connect just via the NAS and then use the NAS or NVR system to just access the camera with no security protocol and rely on the NAS's own security protocol if you choose. Same goes if you want to use a remote backup there, you can utilize that on the LAN or utilize local accounts that you are using with your WANSView account there. Lots of features and systems overall. Now, moving now, we can go into the privacy settings of where there's actually a couple of things here which I'm surprised for such a budget camera you've got them available. One is the scheduled timed recording if you choose, or you can create a custom schedule, but also the privacy area. I'm really surprised this camera included that, because that's generally something that a little bit pricier tiers of camera would include. So for example, right now I can have it so that I don't want the window to be captured, and I can resize that if I choose, and then from there now there's going to be a privacy buffer on that window, as you can see there moving along, and I've of course changed the position since that original setup there. It's by no means the most, detailed and angular. You can't really move more than 4 points of coverage on that privacy mask, but it's still pretty darn good for a budget camera there. Motion detection, as you can see, you can change the sensitivity level or create areas of effect. Again, something I didn't really expect on such a budget camera. If I chose, I can go ahead and say that I want to only capture certain areas of the field. So if I want, I can just move it to a different area. And again, I think the screen recording software is preventing me doing much there, but don't worry, that's not the app's fault. It's very much my own recording software. Again, you can activate that motion alert if you choose, and that will enable it so that if the camera is moved in any way, say if someone breaks in or tries to destroy or smash the camera, or just happens to move the camera, you will have that alert. And that same goes for motion on screen as well. So it's anti-theft, anti-motion as well. And then of course you've got night vision and more, whether you want to utilize infrared mode, where if the light is low, then if, say for example, in the room that it's in right now, that light is actually not as bright as some might like. If that blind was closed right now, the camera would flick into night mode. One moment, I would just let night mode activate itself. So now, as you can see, with the blind closed on the right hand side of the room, the camera has now flicked into that night vision mode. So again, rather than the camera utilizing the natural light of the room, it's using those onboard infrared sensors there to get that night vision mode activated there. So again, just to put that into a little perspective, if I make my way into that room now, you're going to be able to see the difference in what I'm talking about there. So one moment. And the camera has switched back to that mode now that the lights and the blinds have been activated. It took around 5 seconds, which isn't too bad really. I've had it a lot worse before, and certainly on a budget camera, I'm prepared to put up with that. But overall, in terms of those settings and options that are available to the camera, it's pretty detailed there all the way along. And again, you can choose, if you wish, to change the support there of the camera on which Wi-Fi network it's connected to. And do bear in mind, once again, as mentioned in the intro, you do need to run this on a 2.4 gigahertz frequency there. So if you've got dual band, you're fine. Then you're laughing there, but overall, if you're running like a mesh network where the 5 gigahertz node is being utilized for mesh, and therefore 2.5 gigahertz may be disabled to avoid any kind of conflict or delay, then that may be problematic if you're running a sole 2.4 gigahertz network there. And again, you can change lots of little things about the camera to reset it if you choose, but overall, I'm really pleased with what we're seeing here on what this app can do and what it can provide. On the bottom of the screen, if you had an SD card, it would show you those alerts there. And if you're connected with the cloud services which allow the backups to happen remotely, that's something you can do there. And the same goes if you want to change a lot of those localized settings there with regards to account security, diagnosing any problems with the camera, and overall, just a lovely setup there for the camera overall. I can also confirm that this camera does work with NAS systems, although it is worth bearing in mind, as you can see here when I added this camera via OnViv, that you do need to disable the original software because you can't use the onboard WANSView software and your own NAS storage software. But the camera does appear, as you might expect, in the usual ways, and indeed you can access the camera via localized IPs if you choose to. It's just right now, if the camera is using the WANSView software, you can't use it on a NAS. You're going to have to make a choice. But this has been my review of this, the WANSView 2K G2 camera there from Galayou. If this camera does sound like something you might want to use because of its, frankly, incredibly comically low price, then maybe give it a go. I'm not going to say this camera is going to change your world. It really won't. It's a very normal 2K camera, but it has certain features and functionality that certainly put it above a lot of budget cameras in the market right now. And given this camera is only 20 odd nicker and it's now supported, even if you were going to utilize your own network attached storage system and then add a budget camera, maybe a low-end internal camera, this is a great option. But just do be aware of that 2.4 gigahertz support there, because it may be problematic for you if you are running a non-dual band or singular 5 gigahertz mesh network there. But this has been my review of the G2 there from Galayou. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Again, as mentioned, this is a cost-effective camera and you have to look at it with that in mind. And although it's not exactly groundbreaking, it does bring a lot of nice things to the party for that price point that I would recommend. I'm not sure how I feel about WANSView's own cloud storage service providers. I will always like to utilize my own storage, but I know there's a lot of people out there where utilizing an external NVR may not be as easy to set up as just using a cloud service there. So do let me know in the comments. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Click like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to learn more, and there are links in the description to where you can get this camera along with a bunch of other guides and services. But apart from that, I will see you next time.